So who's going to lead the charge this morning?
Hi everyone, so sorry we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, but we'll begin in just a moment. Thanks.
Okay. There we go. Let's see here. Hi guys. Hi everyone. Welcome. Sorry for the little bit of a delay. We've had just a slight technical issue happening with us, trying to get everybody in and everything. Oh, I love it. Katie and Leanne, you might want to change your name because now we have 3 Lisa Rices. So if you just go up to where it has the ellipsis, the 3, or hover over your picture and right click, it should let you change, shouldn't it? If not, we'll make sure they know who you are. That was one of our little glitches that we had, folks, just so that you know, somehow we didn't have links for some of us. And so just trying to make sure that we had all the links out for everybody and got everybody in here. And so you know how it is. Technical is wonderful. And then I am still working on time zones in my life, apparently, because I have this down as 1 o'clock. Yes. However, that would be 1 o'clock Central, not 1 o'clock Mountain Time. So thank you, ladies, for calling me and saying, hey, are you on? And I'm like, wait. Who else is having a Wednesday? I just want to know. Raise a hand, do something if you're having a week. Okay. So welcome and thank you for joining in with us. Hopefully we still have other people who are also having a Wednesday and are trying their best to get themselves into the system and everything else. I am Lisa Rice. I am with Safal Partners, and we are thrilled to be in partnership with NAWDP on the Center of Excellence specific to, all right, you ready for it? System alignment and strategic partnership around registered apprenticeship. Oh my gosh, do you see why we call it the center around here? It's just too long, right? So we're thrilled about being a part of that. The whole purpose of this center is to try to bring you guys different ways and techniques that folks are connecting in registered apprenticeship, what they're doing really well, maybe, you know, where they've even seen some challenges and been able to overcome them. So we're just thrilled to be able to do that with you guys. As I'm hoping a lot of you did, you were on the 30 Minutes of Excellence last month, and you got to hear the tidbits that came from our speakers today, Deb and Leanne and Katie. And today they're going further in depth with all sorts of things for you guys. So it should be very exciting. We do want you to definitely give us questions that you might have for them. You can pop those either into the chat as a general question. You can direct it just to me if you want to be shy, and I understand that completely. And I'll just ask it as a generic question then for you. And also, thank you very much, Alejandro. I hope I said your name halfway correct, Alejandra, sorry, for starting us out. If everybody would be able to put into the chat just real quick who you are and who you're working with or who you work for. That way we just kind of have an idea of what's going on with folks who are on here today. All right, so we tossed a coin. No, we really didn't toss a coin. It's Lisa tossing a coin. And I'm actually going to go to Deb first to give the presentation first, if that's cool with you, Deb. And so are you good with bringing it up on your own?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay, cool. As long as we can get it shared, we should be good. And Willie's here. Yay, Willie is another one of our folks who might be speaking and jumping in, I hope, with some of the things that Deb will be talking about. And Deb, this is awesome. We can see your screen now, so good to go. Oh, you're on mute, hun. Yep. She's like, I know I am. One more second, no worries. People are still signing in anyway. I don't know about you, but if you're working with multiple monitors and you start to do something like this,
Give me 1 minute.
Present, yeah.
Did it show you my email, or did I have my whole screen?
I see your presentation on screen. It's in the not in the presenter mode where you see just one screen, but you see the screen and the thumbnails down the side.
How about now?
Now I see your presenter mode, which shows us that
Jeez,
you got it.
Wow.
Yay.
Okay. Thanks for rubbing off that Wednesday on me, Lisa. What the heck?
I know, I swear.
What the heck? I got on 15 minutes early, was prepared to do this, and I all of a sudden my mouse stopped working. That was crazy. Well, thank you so much for having me here. Let me just collect myself for a minute in my little panic there. My name is Deb Furlong, and I'm with Arizona at Work, Maricopa County, and I'm excited to be here to talk to you about apprenticeships today. So, you know, it's kind of interesting for me whenever we talk about apprenticeships, and for all of you, this will be a nothing slide because we all know it, right? And it's interesting when I look at all these things when it comes to goals for WIOA and goals for apprenticeship, that they're just so the same. And, you know, you almost wouldn't know, are we talking about WIOA here or apprenticeships? And for us, that's kind of the approach that we took in Arizona and Maricopa County, is that they definitely belong together, they work together, it made sense to us. And so we built some intentionality around that. And so right now we are honored to carry the title for a few years of #1 in the nation of apprenticeships and WIOA integration. And we are really proud of that title. And so how did we do that? You know, and I think for all of us, it's leadership. You know, we can lead from behind, but it certainly has to come from our leadership and what their vision is for our county and our community. And that really starts with the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona has a huge investment in apprenticeships and really believes in it and supports it. In fact, our state director here, Willie Higgins, is on the line today, which I'm so excited to have him here. I'm impressed with him. Willie takes me along the ride everywhere we go, but that kind of partnership is critical. And so if you don't know your state apprenticeship coordinator or director, make sure that you're talking with them because they're really vested in this. So it started with our state and how we feel about apprenticeships and how important it is to our community. with that, then our county board of supervisors ensured that we had representation from our apprenticeships on our workforce board, which I think is important to have that on your board represented, so that you're making sure that they have a voice and that people are seeing that side of the work that we do. And of course, we as Maricopa County, we're the Human Services Department, we're the Title II service provider, and we in workforce development really believe in apprenticeships too. And of course, with that flow all the way down is our local employers and educational providers. And I talk about put money in it. 25%. This is, I know you read it, but I just like to say it out loud, but 25% of our service budget and 40% of those we serve are in apprenticeship. And that's a pretty exciting, it's a pretty proud number, because we're really putting money to what we believe is an effective approach to serving our community, both our employers and the individuals living in our community. So people always ask, how did you get started? Like, how did you become #1 in the nation? What did that look like? So really, we talk about that leadership, and they said, hey, let's do this. Let's be intentional about it. And that's that word I want to keep saying here, because I think a lot of times if we don't put activities and strategy behind something, it can be just something that we do. So we set out and contacted all the local apprenticeships in Arizona. Who's out there? What do they look like in our local area? And we went and met with them, identify what are the common goals. And as you see, we talked about earlier, the common goals are all over the place. And from there, we took those common goals and built a collaboration and partnership on what were those common goals. And that was, that took some work, right? Also, how do you get on the ETPL? If you're not on the ETPL, how do you get there? What's the advantages of our program? We did all of that. What do we have to do to build that collaboration? All the nuts and bolts is working with Willie and his team to make all that happen, and our ETPL state coordinator. And then we trained the program staff and apprenticeship staff. And so we got to go in and train this, once we established things, train them on how we do things, and they trained us on how they did things. And from there, we took those components and then designed a process. So it was hearing from each one of us first, identifying those, where can we come in, where does this make sense, and then implement it and learn. And that part I think is really important, because we did not hit this on the first time out, or the second time, or the third time, right? But we kept going back and staying committed to the process. What were the areas we struggled with? What were our successes? And how do we build on them? Keep going back to that. So that was an important thing on how we got started in this space. So how do we do it? We live and breathe apprenticeships. 25%, 40% of those we serve. So it's a big conversation. It's something that our career advisors get excited about it. Every single one of them knows about our apprenticeship programs. We talk about it in our monthly staff meetings. We share success stories. We just really kind of try to make it part of all the work that we do. Our business service team, which is an incredible team, is always out talking about apprenticeships, always figuring out ways to support employers and how that will build their pipeline for talent. And so our business service team is always out there, along with the state. The state has the business services team that is really doing this too. So it's really a multi-pronged approach. I think this one was really important, was dedicated staff. And this can become cumbersome as a service provider to identify staff, but I do want to share with you, I think it's important, and probably one of the keys to our success is having individuals. I work with this apprenticeship program. I'm the point of contact for those individuals. We build understanding. We have a place to go so that we can resolve things before they become too big. That one, and that's important on both sides of the house. Not just on me and not just on our team, but on their team. Who's your point? Who are we going to work things through with? And then that strong and constant communication always. And on-site stuff, like we really want to be where our people are and where our folks are. So we try to be on site, like go to their let them know that we're a part of this, not some outside like sponsor paying the bill. Like we care about this program. We understand your instructors. We understand what you're doing. And so we try to do as much on site and being there and present as we can. That's not always possible. Not all of our centers have that kind of system, but where we can, we try to make that accommodation. Again, just being one with that program. And then that ongoing case management and support. I talked about having that dedicated program and staff member that's there Part of that is helping us to stay connected to the teachers and the students and making sure that our relationships are strong. Sometimes they'll hear stuff. They can really become partners with you in your case management with these folks. They're connected too. I mean, it's kind of the one nice thing if you're the apprenticeship caseworker, right? You've got a team working with you as this person is walking through it, as opposed to someone that's doing occupational skills and you might be the only career advisor kind of working with them. So it's creating those relationships helps to ensure that if someone's got something going on, that we can hear about it and try to be there to help and assist with whatever that is to get them through the next stage. And then leadership check-in meetings. So a lot of this happens with our staff. They're the ones out there doing all the heavy lifting and all the work. But as leaders, we come in sometimes maybe once a quarter, twice a year, and just, hey, how are things going? Just making sure that that is staying there too, because you don't want to have that conversation when there's a problem. You want to have that ongoing conversation. And that has really helped us to maintain these relationships because we are several years in to being #1 in the nation. And we're proud of that. And that's part of it has been to maintain that. It takes work to do it. All right. So with all of that, why, right? So we did all that. We were dedicated to it. This is the piece that I, for me, in the manager role and, certainly loving what it does for our community, but the outcomes are just so cool and they make me want to do more of it, right? For us in Arizona, we see that we serve a higher percentage of veterans. The connections for veterans and the learning style with apprenticeships, it's a perfect match. So I love that. It's one of our priority sectors, right? And I see a larger percentage utilizing the apprenticeship line. We get higher medium wages with apprenticeships typically as it relates to some of our occupational skills. Our placement rates are higher. Of course, they're working. So that's like a kind of a check the box. The retention rates for our apprenticeship folks are much higher just because of the model of that. And oftentimes our apprenticeship programs are less dollars than some of our occupational skills. So the number of individuals we can serve, where you saw 25% of my budget, but it's 40% of those I serve, because some of those fees are a little lower, I can serve more through that process and really, again, taking a bigger impact into our community. And special populations, this is actually an area of growth for us, but we see this here. Females are not a special population, but I love to see, we talk a lot about an apprenticeship, especially in construction, seeing our female numbers high in there in construction. So that's good. But even in disabilities, right now we're operating at 3% currently in our, with those we're serving in apprenticeships that have disabilities. And I'm not sad about that number. I mean, I certainly want that number to be higher, but it's often hard to get disabilities reported in apprenticeships. So the fact that we're able to capture that is encouraging for us. So these are the reasons. It just makes sense, right? It helps my employers, helps the community and we're working, and it helps us to hit all of our goals. And it's really a perfect match for us. And, a lot of this, I will tell you, when I go back to that state thing, how this continues to build is that because I sit at the table with Willie, when the state brings in new folks to the table, he'll say, hey, are you interested in learning about this, right? He doesn't want to mix relationships. Are you interested? And then he'll set up a meeting and we get to talk, so, one of us from Arizona at work and share what we can offer. And then by the time we're done, we're like, oh yeah, we're in, let's get on the ETPL. Let's do this extra step outside of registering with the state, but to do this other thing. And it puts you at the table a little sooner too. So again, I go back to that state thing and with Willie helps me to be a part of, helps us to be a part of that conversation early in the design, as opposed to having everything set up and coming in. So when we first started, we were at the tail end, right? And we had a lot to create. But now in our new space where we get to come in, we're actually designing that along the way as they're building their apprenticeship here in Arizona. And we just absolutely love that. So I think I'm past my time. Thank you. Sorry.
You're actually doing just fine. And I'm going to jump over to Willie to say, how and why did all of this come about from a state perspective? I mean, was this something that, got legislatively mandated? We need to do more of this. Was it just, hey, this is the best way? What happened?
No, it was basically, honest to God, common sense. And Deb's just talking about a couple of years, but I actually was in workforce a long time ago, and I was managing a program in Arizona back in 2003 and 4. So it's 19 years they've been leading the charge for the nation. You know, Arizona, Maricopa County specifically was the charge for this. I think when we started to work with our workforce, people all were concerned about in WIA was performance measures. And so, as you all know, I'm sure that right off the bat, registered apprenticeship meets 5-year 6 performance measures. And the only reason why we didn't meet the 6 of them was because I'm not creating interim credentials for anybody. First of all, I didn't have the time or the resources. So we're actually working right now with the leadership in the United States here to, especially for national programs, to recognize their first year, because it is nationally recognized, that would serve as an interim credential, especially for your union-led programs and associations that are recognized. So that's a good thing. Maybe even some programs that use NCCER could be utilized as that interim credential. So we're looking at those things and overcome those obstacles. One of the good things is that we have a presence on our advisory board. Our chairman has a presence on the Arizona Workforce Council and spreads the word about registered apprenticeship there. That's a good thing. They always come up with wonderful ideas of, they actually endorse 7 or 8 industries that we need to tackle. And I have to constantly remind those people that all of registered apprenticeships are in demand occupations. However, we're going to cater to what you're after. So we will tackle industries. I'll dedicate each of my staff to contact industry members and see how we can grow them. We're working with Maricopa County. Deb's team wants to explore different avenues, and we're going that way as well. So it's all relevant to the situation. Best bang for the buck is the most important part. Registered apprenticeship is the best bang for the buck. That's a direct quote from John Ladd and Mike Walter, deputy administrator and the administrator. So all in all, we have done this for a long time. We've run through some hiccups. Deb's team has changed. Some of our team has changed, and it's the program themselves that help facilitate some of the knowledge, and then that trains the people coming out to serve them. But you know what? If you don't have a relationship with your state director, you need to get that built, or their dedicated or delegated ATR. If you're fortunate enough to have an ATR in your state, you need to get that relationship first of all, and then have a meeting with your workforce director, and then their delegates as well, your workforce development boards, and show them, hey, you know, Deb is published on apprenticeship.gov. If you want to show them that document, that's a big leap forward for you. And then, of course, if you want to have a one-on-one conversation and contact us, we'll be able to help you through that obstacle as well. But all in all, using workforce dollars is really beneficial for the growth of apprenticeship and for people. More importantly, it's the people. That's all. So we're looking forward. We're very excited for the future in Arizona, and I'd be more excited for the rest of the country to catch up with us, because that means that we're collaborating better. And Deb talked about retention real quickly. But from our point of view at the State Apprenticeship Agency, what we want to do is we want to create that career pathway. So I sit on the Skills Commission, and we approve standards for our career technical education programs. And that's an alignment. So we need dual enrollment from our community colleges into our CTEDs. And then we want our programs to sign up for pre-apprenticeships through the CTEDs as well, because that's a resource that we don't have to fund. And see, that's another thing. You utilize those in-school youth funds from the Department of Education, out-of-school youth funds from Title I. And then, of course, you have the voc rehab funding. A good thing to grow apprenticeships is we have a monthly call with our voc rehabilitation counselors, and have one of our programs presenting how they can come and apply to get on that program. So this has helped us grow that disability amount, you know, and so we're thrilled. Everything's still a work in progress. So
But I love that too. I love that you've got that whole voc rehab connectivity happening now too, because that is so important. And by the way, just for those who may not know, rehab has basically been challenged to expand on their apprenticeship stuff. So, you know, they're prime for having those conversations. Thank you, Willie. You gave great tips here. Number one, find out who your ATR is. If you have one, you probably have at least one, probably.
Yep.
Make that relationship. That is huge. So we have a couple of questions here, and I'm actually going to save the one on the WIOA funding because I think that will also come in with Leanne and Katie, what they're going to talk about. But we have another one that the question came in and said, you said you had dedicated staff for each apprenticeship program. And did you mean that you have one for each individual registered apprenticeship program, or is it like more like each industry sector? And I think it was industry sector.
No, not right now for industry sector. It's really, this is the, this is Phoenix Electrical. I'm a partner with Phoenix Electrical. So it's really just one-on-one with the staff. Now at a leadership level, we kind of separated them out, like, I'm doing this one and you're kind of doing this one, but with our participants and programs, it's the specific program. It's too big otherwise, right? We really want that focused attention.
So how many people do you have that are dedicated like that?
Well, right now I have 4.
Okay.
But we, as I will tell you, we're kind of in a growth pattern. Apprenticeships are growing in this nation and we're excited about it. So actually tomorrow we'll be introducing our new process with the team. We're expanding the number of individuals that will be engaging in apprenticeships because it's such an exciting thing. And we want to be able to have more and do this bigger. So some of our smaller ones, like we've got some newer IT ones that we're going to be giving to other career advisors and split a caseload for regular occupational skills versus apprenticeships, where I have 4 that are really just kind of dedicated specifically to our larger apprenticeship programs, which really take up the bulk of their time.
All right. Thank you for that. And I'm just going to say for everybody on here, Maricopa has a fairly large WIOA budget. So they are one of those lucky ones that, I mean, when I used to have a budget, it ran around 5 to 7 million every year. And I was really happy about that. And I've talked with lots of people who are like 5 to 7, I'd give my right arm for that because they have $1 million. So trying to find out ways to do some of this stuff without those funds, it's all about the connections, making those connections at the state level, I think, and also going out like Deb and her partners did to talk to the programs that are already in existence and find out what's happening and how can you work with them. So really good. Thank you. Leanne, we're going to move to you. So Deb, if you'll go ahead and stop sharing your screen, then Leanne should be able to share hers, or is Katie going to be doing the sharing, Leanne?
Katie is going to be doing the sharing.
Okay, cool. And if you'll go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick, that'd be great too.
Sure. I'm Leanne Karras, and I'm the executive director with Southeast Kansas Works, obviously in Southeast Kansas, and also on presenting today is Katie Givens, and she's our assistant executive director.
All right, so who's kicking it off with you guys? I see your presentation up on the screen, so you're good.
I will be kicking it off. Let Katie get to the next slide. I'm not sure what's going on there. There we go. So we wanted to give you a little bit of background. In listening to the prior presentation, we're not as far along in registered apprenticeships as Arizona, but just to give you a little bit of background, Kansas Department of Commerce, which is our state agency, they staff the Kansas Apprenticeship Council, and they also are the reason that we have the funding that we have for registered apprenticeships. So during the last 5 years, they secured 3 different USDOL funded registered apprenticeship grants. One of them was a pilot project that we started on, and it ends June 30th of this year. And also recently they did add a registered apprenticeship director, and they have put some funding through the legislature this season, and it should be approved soon. So they're in the process of establishing a state apprenticeship office at this time. So where we fit into this is we've been issued sub-grant agreements. They've been incorporated into our normal everyday operations. As part of that, there were some FTEs that we incorporated as part of our business service teams. And then we also developed policies that support RA and then also serve as an anchor to any new funding that would come in. And I will turn it over to Katie after this slide.
So, one of the things that's really important in our local area and how we approached this, as you can imagine, each of those different grants that the state obtained had different nuances, as all grants do. And so we had to look at what we were doing and how our relationships, similar to what Deb was saying, how they interact with one another. And as this funding started and as the funding overlapped, how it was really important. So this idea of a no wrong door approach is really what we aimed for in our local area. So whether that started with the state agency, if it was an employer, a sponsor, the joint electrical apprenticeship programs, plumbers and pipe fitters, wherever it was, the apprentice coming through the front doors of our AJCs, business team, as Deb was saying, and that's so important in our local area too. Being able to have those initial conversations with employers and provide that education that no matter where they started, it was an avenue that we could get to registered apprenticeship potentially, and how we leverage those resources together. It was also our aim to make sure that we truly worked seamlessly, and we don't always get it right. We are a work in progress, as Leanne was saying, but how we learn about each other's programs and the processes and making sure that our staff members are trained to make sure that this idea of registered apprenticeship is approachable, that it's not something that is scared off by our employers in any way because it is a government program and all the stigma that could potentially go along with that in obtaining those funds that could support the apprentice and the employer. Looking for those solutions. I think that one of the things that is just critical, Deb hit on it too, is the training of our staff members. So some of this, the dollars that the state was able to obtain allowed us as a workforce board to hire dedicated staff to specifically focus in on registered apprenticeship. At the same time, we were educating our business service staff members, our career service staff members, and our training team staff members. And just a little more background on that too, our local area is very rural. And we are a very lean staff. So we are integrated with our Title III partners and all of our workforce centers. And we have the functional teams that all of you guys have too, but it's critical because of how lean of staff that we are, that we truly do that training so they understand and can promote and understand the processes for when somebody might need to pick up and understand what the concept is and how someone can access these services. So being the foundation, so this is kind of getting to what Lisa says, through this extra money that comes in the state and might be here for a couple of years and might leave. One of the things that we had to do as a local workforce development board, and this is something I have previous experience in another workforce area too here in Kansas, and was critical in that area too, is that we thought of WIOA as the foundation of RA. So what is it when this money influxes in and out of the state? At the beginning of the 3 grants that they've been successfully be able to attain at a state level, there was a tiny bit of state dollars that were available. And this legislative season, they're looking at, funding it into a point. And we don't know what the outcome of that's going to be quite yet, but we're hopeful. But despite how those things could change, we always hear there's some job training program there that has an element of RA. So how do we become the foundation? Well, we can become that foundation through, whether it's the RTI, classroom training, we can be that through OJT, the supportive services elements. So along with these dollars that came into the state, they had different amounts. So one of the first ones that they had, it was a little over $3,000 that the employer sponsor could potentially access. The one that we're getting ready to wrap down right now is $652. That is vastly different, right, to an employer and what they could access. But at a local area level, we have these other dollars that could be tapped into through the WIOA system. So looking, one of the things that's helped us become successful in our relationships with employers is how do we package this together? So to make sure that it's something that is advantageous for an employer and that they want to take advantage of. The thing about it too, when we look at our staff members and their roles and responsibilities in this, is to make sure that we're not putting overly bureaucratic processes onto this. So when we were in the 30 minutes of excellence, one of the things I said that sparked some conversation, and I said, well, sometimes we can be the most flexible, and people were like, well, what do you mean by that, Katie? Because it's a law, it's legislation. And so what I mean by that is that we have the opportunity to not become overly bureaucratic. And sometimes we have the legislation that we look at, and sometimes what we do is we build on process over process of things that, does the law really say we need to do that? Or is that something that makes us feel safe, or something that we've always done before? Or is there some way that we can reduce that paperwork or what staff members are doing to make it easy for the employer to access? I'll give a real life example that I was involved in a conversation today about it. We have the opportunity in Emporia, Kansas, with an organization that is wanting to do youth apprenticeship. It's so exciting, but it's young people who are still in school. And we're trying to see if we can't also get them WIOA in school approved at the same time. So we're having active conversations about customizing what this looks like to the employer process, what the employer needs out of it, what feels good, putting that customer at the center of it too, and really customizing these relationships to the employer and specifically around it, and seeing where we can reduce those things. So just not to build process because of process, but process because it makes sense, process that reduces paperwork, and what can we take in-house versus what we're shipping out to either the apprentice or the employer to do. Continuing on in that, let's see. So the word I came up with this is careful cultivation. So that, we agree, that state partnership is so important, and we are in the process of development of that. How do we correspond? There's this movement and excitement at our state level of different things to come and what could be. So our relationships with our state partners and how things are approved, how we're developing standards and making sure that we have that understanding back at a local level. Our business service team is just critical. Every initial conversation that they have has with a business, it has a component of registered apprenticeship. This is how we train our staff members. We follow up. So if we know that they have a robust training program, we want to find out, is this something that's potentially apprenticeable? And so just having that conversation, and then that quick responsive connection back to whether it's the state agency, we have intermediaries that are coming into play now, kind of the future of RA here in Kansas, making sure we facilitate those quick connections in some way. Recently, we've also established a new outreach team in our local area. And so when we think about that, we want to equip our outreach team that they are talking about registered apprenticeship all the time too, facilitating those warm handoffs, helping to eliminate the stigma around RA too. I think in Kansas, we definitely have a continued stigma regarding trades in particular. So talking about that, trying to reduce that stigma, and also talking about it's not just the trades that are registered apprenticeable. There's so many other things that can be too. So really trying to move that education piece in our local area. So the future, like I said, we have new dollars coming in the state. The state was successful again, their third round of this, and it's changing things up again. And there are going to be more involvement in the state than I think there has been previously when it comes to their roles and responsibilities. They are hiring individuals who are specializing in specific industries, and they're going to have a component of eligibility determination. So again, that seamless approach is going to become even more important to us in making sure we understand that state process and how it marries up in our local area, but also understanding, I think, for us as workforce boards, what that could look like in other local areas too, because we might be working with the same businesses or same sponsors, same intermediaries. So making sure that we have clear connections here, I think, is going to be important as we move into the future in our local area. So we're excited. It's definitely something that we want to grow, be that foundation, And foundation goes from, it's not just the money, but it's the employer processes too. Whether we are the front door for maybe an apprenticeship program in some way. I know that our new state director is fantastic, and she's talking to us about if we become an intermediary. So there's lots of movement here in Kansas. Leanne, anything that you want to add on or share?
I was just going to say we do have another executive director from Kansas on here. Keely, is there anything that you would like to add or share?
Leanne, thank you for offering. No, I'm here to learn today. So as my friends in Kansas know, for whatever reason, the Kansas City Metro has just not latched on to apprenticeship. And we actually see it more in other areas than we do in our big metro. So this is great. I've taken a million notes. Thank you both.
And you'll have a million more before everything's over with, I'm sure, on the notes. All right, so if you want to go ahead and stop sharing, Katie, I'm going to pop out this one question that came from the chat, which is basically they wanted to know, and I think both of you should be answering this, did you use WIOA funding? Which I know we kind of heard that from you, Katie, but they wanted to know what kinds of things did you actually pay for, and at what point in the process did you enroll these participants? Always a good question, always a good one. So Katie, why don't you take that first, and then we'll hop over to Deb.
That's a great question. So the process right now is when we get a hold of information that an apprentice is starting, we try to enroll them and we owe a basic. So we start there. So we're just collecting the basic information, getting them that enrollment that doesn't attach any funding to them whatsoever. And that's really helpful in our integration because our business service team is integrated. So we have Wagner, Pizer, and WIOA staff working on it. And so that helps build performance on both of those if they last the 90 days or beyond. Then at that point where we're looking at, okay, is this sustainable? Then we're collecting the rest of the documentation based on what they're doing. So that's kind of how that gateway starts. Based on what's going on with them, we'll figure out if there's something else depending on what program or funding stream and the components of that funding stream too. Again, we try to make that seamless behind the scenes so that they're not seeing it, they're just getting the information that we're requesting. So as far as the different things that we paid for, we paid for tools, steel-toed boots, childcare. Maybe they haven't been working for a while and we need to give them that first month of childcare, transportation, any of those supportive service realms. Oftentimes with registered apprenticeship, it can stick in that area for the most part for us. The other things that we've been doing too is tagging on. So when we're developing the RTI and the funds that have been available through these state dollars, it's allowable to grade those funds with the grants that they have received. So maybe it's taking it to that point, and then we're looking at what else we can fund out of the classroom training part. We have also successfully done OJT. So maybe the RTI has been covered with the state grants, but maybe we want to braid it up with OJT. That is an allowable function here in our state for us to do that. One thing that I was thinking about that in the ETPL, one thing that our state has done that's made it really easy for us in RA is, and I've experienced this two different ways. So under the old legislation, the workforce board that I was working with, they put it on their demand occupation list. Anything that is registered apprenticeship is approved automatically. And so that was something they did under old legislation. The state has come up with new policy that it mirrors that same methodology, is that if it's gone through the process, if it's approved, then it's on the ETPL. And so that is a barrier and one less process that we've been able to get rid of to help support the RA sponsors.
That's awesome. And Katie, are you a state apprenticeship agency or an office of apprenticeship, federal level?
So we have a state office of apprenticeship. So they go through the state to get approved.
Okay, so you're a state apprenticeship agency. So things are different if you're state or you're, so we call it SAA, or if you're a federal office of apprenticeship, an OA state. They can be different, but it's still the same kind of basic concepts for it. All right, Deb, what have you got to say about this whole WIOA funding question? What have you paid for and all that good stuff?
Great question. I think I probably mirror Katie in that, is that, we've paid for the classroom education part. The support services, I think, are really, really critical. And even, just to throw this out here, there are some programs that are funded, right? And they maybe don't need our money to pay for their education. However, support services are something that pretty much many people need. And so even if you have like one of our programs actually ended up self-funding itself. And so they moved off of our list, and we said, well, we still know the needs of many of the people in that program. And so now we're serving them, not so much paying for the apprenticeship program, but we're just supporting them in their role through support services. So we do things like tools, gas, childcare, clothing. We've even done some housing for a little bit temporarily to get someone started. So pretty much all those things. But what I love about WIOA, right, is it tells us what we can't do, and it leaves a lot of flexibility with what we can do. And so I love that. And so that's what we paid for this far, but doesn't mean I wouldn't ask for something else. I love that. I do OJT, something Katie mentioned, and I want you to know it's been a conversation of mine since I started here 2 years ago, and our county is finally making some moves in that area. So we would like to start adding that to the offerings for our OJ, for our registered apprenticeships, which we think will help some of our employers jump in. And of course, with the intermediaries makes it a little bit easier too. So those are some of the things. And when we talk about enrollment, because we're working with all of these teams, right? We know when their start dates are. They have built in our timelines. So I can say that even we've adjusted timelines where, the pandemic happened, things stopped. And then I was like, hey, do you remember we need this much time, and they're like, okay, wait, I'm sorry, we're going to move the class start date. So we kind of meet with people. They kind of need to be accepted into the registered apprenticeship program before we, kind of hit the button. But our space with that, and probably Katie is this with too, if they don't make it all the way, they still have goals of wanting to get into a training and education. And so we also want to be there to get okay, that didn't work out, come here. We got you. Right? That's an important piece too. And actually something I'm really trying to get more from my apprenticeships, right? My apprenticeship programs right now is give me all the people that you didn't select. Can I have that list? Can we find a way for me to get that list? Because I love that people are hungry. And and honestly, I do want to say that I know we're running out of time, but that is probably one of the big, when we're meeting with our apprenticeship programs, is figuring out the enrollment. How do I meet my timelines with all the million things I need and all the things you're trying to do, and they're trying to do their own life too, right? So I think that's the approach we took, is we're just going in that you're doing this. And if you don't end up getting in there, hopefully you'll come with us and we're going to find the next space for you in a different road to travel, but still towards educating and career pathway, which is what they were hungry for, right?
And I love that. I love that you're doing that. And Deb, if you happen to have like a example of what you give to the RA programs, that's the timeline kind of piece, we would love to be able to put that up with technical, here's somebody could grab this. By the way, to let everybody know, our Center of Excellence website, we expect to launch next week. Oh my God, please. Prayers for that. Okay. So
Lisa, can I just Angela Rogers put a statement in the chat box.
Yes.
There. She says, we thought of WIOA as the foundation of RA. Mm-hmm. Well, that's an explosive comment. If you want to build a relationship with your state director, WIOA is not the foundation of registered apprenticeship. It's a supplement for job seekers to get in, and Deb's actually correct. There are more outreaches to try and grab people that need our services. But even our community colleges, if the student or the apprentice qualifies for a Pell Grant, they don't get served. But Deb can help them with supplemental services. Just remember that registered apprenticeship has really bent over backwards to try and suit WIOA services. Oh, yeah. If you go back in your history books and look in the Tegels and the 10s from 02, 07 and 44, 11 specifically, you'll see that it was cumbersome for an apprenticeship program to register on ETPL, which is why they choose not to do it. But with us coaching them around and helping them through the step-by-step, that's how we've been able to be successful. So Just
Yes.
remember, kid gloves all of the time, and it's all for the job seeker. Registered
Absolutely.
apprenticeship is the top of the hill, and we're pushing everybody to that top of the hill. So just wanted to address
Absolutely.
that.
And
Thank you.
so thank you so much, Willie. And so from the Center of Excellence perspective and everything, we don't just go to just WIOA as the foundation. It's the entire system. It is the entire workforce education. And when I say education, I'm talking about K through 20, adult basic ed, career and technical education. It's the whole gamut that is the foundation, because they have to work together, including industry, right? We got to solve. If you don't have a business, you don't have an apprenticeship. So it's kind of like that whole system is the foundation. And WIOA funding has a huge role to play in there. It really does.
Yep.
Angela also asked us, and I think you kind of answered the first question about braiding the funding, you guys. I think you kind of talked about how, like with Katie, you use some different grants and stuff. And Deb, you're like, well, if they don't take them, we'll take them over here and we'll use them in something else. But the next part of the question that she's asked here is, are you a workforce intermediary and partnering with employers? And before you answer it, I just want to say that I think intermediary is the least understood word, maybe, when we are talking about registered apprenticeships, because you can literally have USDOL contracted intermediaries. You can have somebody who just calls themselves an intermediary. And you can have private enterprise that says, hey, we're an intermediary for this. So it's so if you're going to say, yes, we consider ourselves a workforce intermediary, would you please explain what you mean by that? So Deb, do you want to take that one first, or maybe Willie? I don't know. Either way, on you guys.
We are entitled to. I think that might be an important piece that people can understand our approach, is that we decided which part of the wheelhouse we were going to jump in on, right? And so we started with the participant and funding that individual. We are now, when you think about intermediary, really, it's anybody that's helping to influence or connect people, right? So I could say my business service team is 100% an intermediary, right? That's a lot of what they talk about, but that's just in that training and language, and that's to support the employer and their side of the house to address their talent pipeline and that training piece that they have. So, but I don't have anything formal, and I really try to sit in what is it that we do well. And this is what we do. And because I think some people come to us and think that I've got this whole employers and I'm running the whole show, and that's not it. We're not doing that. This is the piece that we jump. We're expanding, but this is where we were successful and built the model that was sustainable for us.
Yes, and I love that. Sit in the place where you do well, and go with it from there. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, you said it correctly. There's everybody and their aunt wants to be an intermediary sponsor. And all I get is people coming to the States saying, hey, we've got the best training program that was ever invented in the whole wide world. How can you help us get on ETPL to get funding? And I always say, if you set up a business model to get WIOA money, it doesn't seem to be a very successful business.
Right.
So we have to give them guidance. We get some of the intermediaries that are not actually intermediaries, but a recognized intermediary partner that think they got carte blanche coming in the States. So what we've done at NASDAQ, because I'm on that NASDAQ executive board, is all of the SAA directors. We work with OA. We've put together an onboarding process for these intermediaries and protocol. And it's really going to help the workforce people understand and them understand how to deal with their workforce partners and not be so demanding that we need to build a partnership.
That's excellent, Willie. That is such a big piece that I really do think is needed. So, all right. So Leanne or Katie, how would you answer this? Are you?
Well, it's kind of a new perspective for us because we just received, it's called the SAEEI grant.
Yep.
And as part of that grant, the state has hired intermediaries to work with employers.
Yep.
And they have the funding for the training. And then we have the funding for the supportive services under that grant. So for us, it's something completely different at this point with the SAEEI grant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. And then we had one more question. I don't know if you can answer this quickly or not, but there was the question about how the heck did you get all those partners to come together and actually talk about and do something like this? I have a feeling that was maybe aimed more at Deb than at Katie and Leanne, but how did you get them all in the room to talk about and say, yeah, we'll do this?
I didn't try to get them all in a room. I went to them. We went to them and set up appointments and, got to know them individually and what was important to them. I'm not sure if that's what that question was about, but that's kind of how we did it. Now we're moving in this other project, with Willie and you, Lisa, right, to bring our IT partners and try a different avenue in that space. I don't know what that looks like yet. But with our other folks, we just, hey, where's the list? Your state has a list. Go get the list. Start calling them and seeing how you can work together. So that's what we did.
Yeah. And
I don't think I would have ever got them in a room.
I absolutely believe that it takes one-on-one kinds of conversations. That's very time intensive. I know this. We're not expecting this to turn around quickly. But if you can make those individual conversations happen, I think it's awesome. We are at almost the top of the hour here. Katie, Leanne, Deb, Willie, did you have any parting remarks? Like drop one more golden nugget in 10 seconds.
Oh, you would need them. Just continue doing your outreach and just always remember, it's always about the job seeker. Everything, all of us are here is to help people get into a good career. Registered Apprenticeship is there to serve that. That's about it. You keep that and you'll do well.
That's right. Good. Katie, Leanne, anything else?
I think it's a good program, and I think it's something worth pursuing and continue to pursue. I think it's got a long-term benefit to everyone, and I think when you look at the overall salaries, outcomes, and things, it shows that it's a highly successful program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This recording, as usual, will be available for you on the NAWDP's YouTube channel, which you can find off of their website as well. And stay tuned for more interactions like this. Our next 30 minutes of excellence, let me make sure I got the right date, should be on April 27th, which please jump in, go to the NAWDP site, register for it so you get the link, and join us for yet more information about registered apprenticeship and how you can move it forward within your community. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks to our speakers. I love you guys.
Guys, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. See you later.